about its own axis. So Quran says that the sun and the moon, besides revolving, also rotate about its own axis. And today, after science is advanced, we can have the image of the sun on a tabletop. And we find that the sun has got black spots. And it takes approximately 25 days for these black spots to complete one rotation, indicating that the sun takes approximately 25 days to complete one rotation. And today, Alhamdulillah, all the schools have incorporated this in the textbook. When I was in school, I was told that the sun does not rotate. Today, all the school textbooks mention that the sun rotates. Imagine what we came to know recently, 30 years back, 40 years back, 50 years back. The Quran mentions 1400 years ago that the sun, besides revolving, also rotates about its own axis. Who could have mentioned this in the Quran? And the atheists will give a long pause. Don't wait for the reply, you can continue. The Quran says in Surah Yasin, chapter number 36, verse number 38, وَالشَّمْسَ تَجْرِي لِمُسْتَقَرٍ لَهَا. The sun is running its course for a period determined, for a term determined. The Arabic word mustaqar, meaning a place determined, it also means a period determined. Today science tells us that the sunlight we have is due to a chemical reaction taking place since millions of years. And one day this chemical reaction will cease, will stop, and the sun will cease to exist. But they say that will take another few million years. And today science tells us that the sun, along with the solar system, is moving in a point in the universe known as solar apex. And the point in the Hercules known as Alpha Lyra. And it's moving at a speed of 12 miles per second. That's what the Quran says, that the sun is running its course for a period determined to a place determined. Today science tells us that the atmosphere we have above the earth, the sky, as we call in layman's terminology, it acts as a protected ceiling. It prevents the harmful rays, the X-rays, the ultraviolet rays, from entering the surface of the earth, without which life would have ceased to exist on the face of the earth. This atmosphere outside the earth, which we call as sky, it acts as a protected ceiling. It filters the harmful radiation from reaching the surface of the earth, which is very important for life to exist on the face of the earth. The Quran says clearly in Surah Anbiya, chapter number 21, verse number 32, that we have made the sky as a protected ceiling. The Quran refers to the atmosphere outside the earth, the sky, as a protected ceiling, which science has confirmed today. When I was in school, I had learned that there are 3 states of matter: solid, liquid, and gas. And when I was in school, we thought that the space outside the organized astronomical system is vacuum. Today, after science advance, we have come to know that there are bridges of matters outside the organized astronomical systems, which we call today as plasma. And today science says this is the 4th state of matter. The Quran says in Surah Furqan, chapter number 25, verse number 59, it is He who has made the heavens and the earth and has made everything in between. That means the Quran says that in between there is no vacuum. There is something God has created. Today, science calls it as plasma, as the 4th state of matter. Furthermore, one of the greatest discoveries made in the subject of astronomy today is that the universe is expanding, made by a very famous scientist, Edwin Hubble. that the universe is expanding, it is receding from one another. And Quran says in Surah Dariyat, chapter number 51, verse number 47, that we have created the vastness of space, the expanding universe. The Arabic word used is muksiuna, the expanding universe. Imagine, the Quran mentions 1400 years ago that our universe is expanding, which we came to know hardly 100 years back. There may be certain skeptics who will say, it is nothing great that the Quran speaks about astronomy since the Arabs were advanced in the field of astronomy. I do agree with them that the Arabs were advanced in the field of astronomy. But I'd like to remind them, it was centuries after the Quran was revealed that the Arabs became advanced in the field of astronomy and not the vice versa. So it is from the Quran that the Arabs learned about astronomy and not the vice versa. In the field of physics, there is a very famous theory known as theory of atomism, which was propounded 23 centuries ago by the people called Democrats. And they said that the smallest part of matter is an atom, and the atom cannot be divided. And in Arabic, we call this as zarra, atom, which is the smallest part of matter, which cannot be divided, is called as zarra. And it's also mentioned in the Quran. The Arabic word zarra is also mentioned in the Quran. But today, after science has advanced, we have come to know that though atom is the smallest part of matter, having the characteristic of the element, that too can be divided into protons and neutrons. And the Quran speaks about zarra. So someone will think that if the Quran speaks about zarra, about atom, that means the Quran is outdated. Let us analyze what does the Quran speak about zarra. It's mentioned in Surah Yunus, chapter number 10, verse number 61. That when you tell to the unbelievers that the last day would come, they will say it will never come. Tell them, it will surely come with the permission of thy Lord, in whose record is perpetuous things as small as the atom and things greater and smaller than the atom. That means the Quran is not outdated, the Quran is updated. That the Quran says that every minute detail as small as the atom is mentioned in the record for patience, and things smaller and greater than the atom is also mentioned. That means the Quran tells there are things smaller and greater than the atom. Who could have mentioned this in the Quran 1400 years ago? In the field of hydrology, when I was in school, and we all learned in school about the water cycle. The water cycle that we learned in the school, it says that the water evaporates from the ocean, it forms into clouds, the clouds move in the interior, they join, and the water falls from the clouds, and the water table is replenished. This water cycle was first described by Sir Bernard Palissy in the year 1580. Previously, even in 7th century BC, Thales of Miletus, he said, it was the spray of the ocean which was picked up by the winds which fell into the interior as rain. People did not know from where did the underground water come. They thought it was the pressure of the wind on the ocean which thrust the water into the interior. And they thought that there was a secret passage, which at the time of Plato they called it as the Tartarus, through which the water flowed back. People believed till as late as 17th century, even Descartes believed in it. And Aristotle, he believed in 19th century that the underground water came from the mountain caverns which fed water to it. Today we know that the underground water that we have is due to the seepage of the rainwater in cracks in the ground. It's mentioned in the Quran, in Surah Zumar, chapter number 39, verse number 21. Seest thou not, it is He who sends down water from the sky and leads it in grounds, in cracks, and causes sown seeds of varying colors to grow. The Quran says in Surah Rum, chapter number 30, verse number 24, it is He who sends down water from the sky and then gives life to the earth after it is dead. The Quran says in Surah Mohammed, chapter number 23, verse number 18, that it is we who send down water from the sky and we are able to store it, we are even able to drain it. The Quran says in Surah Hijr, chapter number 15, verse number 22, that we cause fecundating winds. The Arabic word is lawaki, coming from the word lakaha, meaning to fecundate. And today science tells us that the water that comes from the sky is due to various reasons. One of them is when pollen grains are picked up by the wind and they fecundate the clouds, you find water emerging. The second reason is when the clouds join together, they form into a heap and the water falls down from the sky. The Quran says in Surah Nur, chapter number 24, verse number 43, that the clouds move slowly and gently, then they join together and water emerges from the sky. The Quran says in Surah Rum, chapter number 30, verse number 48, that the water evaporates, forms into clouds, the clouds move in the interior and they fall down as rain. The Quran speaks about the water cycle in great detail in several places. In Surah Araf, chapter number 7, verse number 57. In Surah Ra'd, chapter number 13, verse number 17. It's mentioned in the Quran. In Surah Furqan, chapter number 25, verse number 48 and 49. It's mentioned in the Quran. It's clearly mentioned in Surah Fatir, chapter number 35, verse number 9. It's mentioned in Surah Yasin, chapter number 36, verse number 34. It's mentioned in Surah Jasha, chapter number 45, verse number 5. In Surah Qaf, chapter number 50, verse number 8 and 9. It's mentioned in Surah Mulk, chapter number 67, verse number 30. In Surah Waqia, chapter number 56, verse number 67 to 68. It's mentioned in Surah Tariq, chapter number 86, verse number 11. I can go on giving only references in the glorious Quran which talks about the water cycle in great detail. Who could have mentioned about the water cycle in so much great detail which we came to know hardly 500 years back? In the field of geology, today the geologists tell us that the earth on which we live, the deeper layers, they are hot and fluid and they cannot sustain life. The superficial layer is a thin crust on which we live. And the crust is very thin, hardly 1 to 10 to 30 miles in thickness. And there are high chances that this superficial crust will shake. The radius of the earth is about 3,950 miles. And the superficial layer is very thin, hardly 1 to 30 miles in thickness. There are high possibility that the superficial crust will shake. It is due to the folding phenomena which gives rise to mountain ranges which prevents the earth from shaking. So today the geologists they tell us it is the mountain ranges which prevent the earth from shaking. The Quran says in Surah Naba, chapter number 78, verse number 6 and 7, that we have made the earth as an expanse, وَالْجِبَالَ أَوْتَادًا, and the mountains as stakes. The Arabic word awtad, it means stakes. It means tent pegs. Like when we put a tent peg into the ground, the portion that we see above the ground is a very small portion. The major portion of the tent peg is deep underground. So the Quran says that we have made on the earth mountains standing firm as tent pegs. And the Quran repeats this message in Surah Ghashiyah, chapter 88, verse number 19. And Surah Naziyat, chapter number 79, verse number 32, that we have placed on the earth mountains standing firm. There is a book by the name of The Earth, which is referred in most of the universities while teaching the subject of geology. One of its authors is Dr. Frank Kress, who was previously the president of the Academy of Sciences in USA and was also the scientific advisor to the previous ex-president of USA, that Jimmy Carter. And he draws in this book The Earth, mountains, and it shows that the mountains have got roots, it got wedges. And the roots go deep underground. And the mountain above the ground is a very small portion, like the tip of an iceberg. The iceberg that is there below water is the major portion. What you see above the water is a small portion. And Dr. Frank Press says it is due to the mountains that give stability to the earth. If the mountain weren't there, then the earth would have shaken. Quran says exactly the same. In Surah Anbiya, chapter number 21, verse number 31. In Surah Luqman, chapter number 31, verse number 15. And Surah Nahl, chapter number 16, verse number 5, that we have placed on the earth mountain standing firm, lest it would shake. Imagine, the Quran mentions the exact function of the mountain as to prevent the earth from shaking, which we have come to know recently. Who could have mentioned this in the Quran? In the field of oceanology, the Quran says in Surah Furqan, chapter number 25, verse number 53, that it is He who has let free two bodies of flowing water, one sweet and palatable, and the other salty and bitter. Though they meet, they do not mix. There is a barrier which is forbidden to be trespassed. Previously, the commentators of the Quran, they could not understand what does the Quran mean by saying that. They knew that there were two types of water, sweet and salty, but they could not understand what the Quran means by saying they meet but they do not mix. Today we have come to know that whenever one type of water flows into the other type of water, it loses its constituents and gets homogenized into the water it flows. This homogenizing area, the Quran refers to as barzakh, unseen barrier. Imagine what science has discovered recently. The Quran mentioned 1400 years ago that whenever the sweet water flows into the salt water, it loses its constituents and gets homogenized into the water it flows. And we can see this in several places in the world. You can see in the southernmost tip of South Africa, when you go to Cape Town, you can see this phenomenon. You can see this phenomenon in Egypt when River Nile flows into the Mediterranean Sea. And the best example is the Gulf Stream. It starts in the Gulf of Mexico, then goes northwards towards the east coast of USA. Then it moves eastwards towards the west coast of Europe. It flows for thousands of miles. And if you're going in a boat and you pick up water from one side of the Gulf Stream and the water from the other side, you will find that one is sweet and the other is salty. Even the temperature between the two waters differ. Imagine, Quran speaks about this phenomena 1400 years ago, which we came to know recently. In the subject of oceanology, there is a verse in the Quran, in Surah Nur, chapter number 24, verse number 40, which says, as to the state of the unbeliever, as to those who reject our sign, the unbelievers, their state is like the depths of darkness in a vast deep sea. Waves topped with dark clouds. When a man stretches out his hand, he cannot see. For to whom God gives no light, light does not reach. This verse of the Quran, along with the translation, was taken to Professor Durga Rao, who was a professor in marine geology in Jeddah, in the University of King Abdulaziz. And when he was asked to comment on this verse, he said that this verse does not speak about a normal sea, it speaks about a vast deep sea. And previously we human beings, we did not know that the depth of the ocean was dark. Because a human being could not dive more than 20 to 30 meters. He could not survive. After the submarines were invented in 1900, that we have come to know that the depths of the ocean are dark. And Professor Durga Rao said that the darkness in the vast deep ocean is because of various phenomena. Number one, when light enters the water, it gets absorbed in layers. And we learned in school that the light has got 7 colors: vib pure, violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange, and red. So when the light enters the sea or the ocean, the first 10 to 15 meters of the light, it absorbs the red color. So if a person goes underwater more than 25 to 30 meters, and if he starts to bleed, he will not be able to see the red color of his blood, because red color does not reach that portion. And I remember few years back, I had gone to Mauritius and I had the opportunity of going into a submarine deep underwater. So when I remembered this, I took a chocolate paper of Kit Kat, red color. And as the submarine kept on going down, the red color disappeared. The moment I on my mobile and I gave external light, I could see the red color. That means the red color is absorbed by the first 15 to 20 meters. Later on, from 30 to 50 meters, the orange color is absorbed. From 50 to 100 meters, the yellow color is absorbed. Yellow color is absorbed. From 100 to 200 meters, the green color is absorbed. And beyond 200 meters, the blue color is absorbed, and above that, it's violet and Indian. So, the light is absorbed in successive layers. That's how you find layers of darkness, as the Quran says. Layers of darkness, one on top of the other. Waves topped with waves. What does the Quran mean by saying waves topped with waves? Today science is advanced, and we have come to know that the waves that we see on the superficial part of the ocean or the sea is what we see with the eyes. It is called as superficial waves. But when you go underwater, even underwater, there are internal waves. This internal waves, it divides the ocean into two parts. The superficial part and the deep part. The superficial part is warm and lit up. The deep part is dark and cold. The Quran says, waves topped with waves, topped with dark clouds. When the sunlight is given from the sun, many a times it is absorbed by the clouds. That which is not absorbed by the cloud, it hits the ocean. Some of it is reflected, the balance goes in the ocean, it is absorbed in successive layers. So the Quran says, the state of the unbeliever is like the depths of darkness in a vast deep sea. Waves topped with dark clouds. For to who he gives no light, light does not reach him. If a man stretches out his hand, he cannot see. For to whom he gives no light, light does not reach him. So Prophet Durga Rao said, this information in the Quran cannot be given by a human being, because we came to know about this recently and the Quran is 1400 years ago. In the field of biology, the Quran says in Surah Anbiya, chapter number 21, verse number 30, وَجَعَلْنَا مِنَ الْمَاءِ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ هَيْ أَفْلَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. We have created every living thing from water. Will you not then believe? Imagine in the deserts of Arabia, where there is scarcity of water, the Quran says every living thing is made from water. Today, after science advance, we have come to know that the basic cell of every living creature, it's a cell which contains cytoplasm, which contains about 50 to 90% water. Today, science tells us that every living creature contains about 50 to 90% water. And imagine, Quran mentions 1400 years ago that every living thing is made from water. Who would have believed in this? In the subject of mathematics, there is something called as theory of probability. That means, if you want to make a wild guess, depending upon the options that are available, the chances that if you make a wild guess and you will be correct is 1 divided by the chances available. Let me give you an example for better understanding. For example, if I toss a coin, if you make a wild guess, the chances you'll be correct is 1 upon 2, because there are 2 options, heads or tails. If you make a wild guess whether you say heads or tails, the chances you'll be correct is 1 upon 2, it is 50%.